All right. Hello, hello. Welcome, especially to all my newcomers who are not terribly familiar with me and the group yet. Great to see you in here. Looks like I have somebody joining me on the Zoom. I now have a couple on the Zoom. Whoever popped on the Zoom first, I just see a phone number. So feel free to put in the chat who you are. I'm opening up the Zoom chat. We are live in the group as well. Let me pop into the group, make sure that I can see the comments. Okay, cool. And Dana's on. Thank you for saying hi, so I know that it's working. And thank you for being here. Yay, okay. Alice, what's up? Rocking with me on the Zoom for another week. I love it. Yay, Dana's listening while she's cooking dinner. Always welcome to multitask on these. All right, a little housekeeping for anybody joining. You are free to keep your recording your cameras off, no problemo. You can type in the chat if you can use your fingers at the moment. If you're busy and you're just listening in, no problem. And if you're joining via the Facebook group, feel free to type any questions or comments there as well. And I will be toggling back and forth, make sure I get to any questions or pertinent comments to the discussion. So tonight's masterclass is all about food selection. Yay, Alice going for her walk. I love it. Daily activity. Whoop. I'm actually going to be doing that after this. Okay, so tonight I have, y'all just bear with me. I might be going down some serious rabbit holes tonight. This topic, as I was jotting down my thoughts to share with you, as usual, you know that my thoughts tend to be a little counter to a lot of what you hear out there. And hopefully they make you think and they make you consider how to apply the things you heard out there to your own context and help you find a way forward for yourself. So this week is no different. This week is very much honing into that concept of owning your journey, as I always say, being the CEO of your body and your journey. So everything I always do, I'm hoping to empower you with the tools and the abilities to take your health into your own hands, your body transformation into your own hands, own your journey, make decisions that apply to you, always consider how things apply to you, and not just taking what people have to say at their word, or not just taking, in this case, a yes and no foods list that somebody else shares online and saying, this is what I need to be eating or what I don't need to be eating. So tonight we are going deep into how to choose food, how to make decisions about what to put in your body beyond your macros. So on keto, we know, and on truly any body composition change, diet, fat loss, weight loss, muscle building journey, anything where you're trying to change your body, macros are going to matter. And we're going to get into that in just a minute. Beyond that, though, the next question I get is, can I get a meal plan? Can you give me a meal plan? Can you tell me what to eat? Just tell me what to eat and I'll eat what you tell me to eat. I do not like giving meal plans because that is a way to feed you for a day or a week or a month or however long I'm giving you the meal plan for. And then you cannot do it on your own. So I'm all about teaching you how to cook. We're teaching you how to choose. We're teaching you how to fish so that you can take this and make it your own. All right, so that's what we're talking about tonight. How do you then take your macros or your chosen way of eating, keto, carnivore, low carb, paleo, whatever it might be, and then make decisions about, well, how do I choose what's going to go into my body? How do I know if this is good or not, right? A lot of the questions I get, is it Coach Nat approved? It's not about whether it's coach not approved. I'm going to teach you the principles and my philosophy around nutrition so that you can understand for yourself whether it is you approved or not, because that's what matters. And not because you're listening to your emotions, but because you're listening to solid nutritional information, advice, education from a qualified professional, and also your own intuition. Checking in with more than just the way you feel in the moment about wanting to emotionally eat, but beyond that to understanding, is this good for me or not? Is this going to move me forward or not? Is this going to hold me back or not? So let's get into the masterclass tonight. Food selection. Let me move that window over there so I can see my notes. And if y'all have any questions as I'm going, especially as I get into the foods, because I'm sure that that will be something you'll have questions about, because we're going to go deep into all the foods that could be causing you issues. Feel free to drop them in the chat and I'll grab them as we go. Okay, so just as an introduction, let's say you're nailing your macros. You got macros from a calculator, or you got macros from a coach, or you figured them out yourself and you're testing them out. And you're not seeing results, and you're wondering why you're not seeing results. Is it your macros? Is it something else? Is it the foods you're eating? Have you noticed that certain foods make you gain weight? Make you gain weight. Talk about that in a minute. Have you noticed that when you eat certain foods, you just can't make progress? You wonder why or how these certain foods are stalling your progress when you seem to be doing everything else right. Or how about when you see other people eating keto snacks and treats and keto breads and all kinds of junk, excuse me, but junk, it's all junk. And they seem to be making progress on their journey, and you're over here eating one item because you're trying to eat perfectly clean, and you're eating like 4 foods and you're not seeing any results. And that's frustrating. What is this perfectly clean eating anyway? We all know there's no such thing as perfect, but we will talk about what this concept of clean and what that really means. Okay, so we're going to get into why your food selection actually does matter when it comes to body transformation, which foods to watch out for, and then how to design a diet that's right for you to get you the results you want. So beyond labels, beyond keto or carnivore or paleo or whatever chosen label, but within that, how to design your own food plan. And I don't mean meal planning, but that can be a part of this as well. It's more about just choosing the foods themselves. Okay, so first off, I always like to say what these classes are not going to talk about. So we are not talking about trigger foods tonight. We are not talking about those foods that cause you to overeat. So look, it's clear, obviously, those are going to impact your progress, because if you can't stop eating, you're absolutely not going to be able to lose weight or lose body fat. So that's a topic for another time. Things that send you into binges, or are the foods that you can't have around. Oh, you know what? That has been coming up more and more with clients lately. So, and not just clients, but in the challenge and the group. So I think we need a masterclass on that, about dealing with those trigger foods. How do you eventually be able to live around your trigger foods without going off the deep end? I think that'll be a really powerful topic to discuss for y'all. But today we're not talking about trigger foods. We're not talking about emotional eating. We are talking about those pesky foods that you may enjoy the taste of them, but every time you eat them, you notice that the scale goes up or it stops going down, and it's so frustrating. Okay, so let me jump into the Facebook group, make sure there's no questions. Yay, okay, Deb, glad you're here, woohoo. Okay, all right, so first let's talk about why certain foods seem to cause a stall in your progress. And in the group, thank you for answering the question, those of you who did, talking about the things that you've noticed cause you the most problems. Let me see if I can jump down there real quick. Yeah, because there was a lot of similarities here. The things I saw so much of were every single different type of flour in the world. Most of y'all here in this group are not consuming white flour, traditional flours, right? Grain-based breads and things of that nature. But lots and lots I'm seeing here: almond flour, coconut flour, almond flour, anything packaged, gluten-free products. So that's going to include every single alternate flour out there. So that's something I hear all the time. Nuts and nut products. So nut butters, nut flours, nut milks, even for a lot of people can cause problems. A lot of people mentioning dairy, different types of dairy, whether it be cream, cheese, heavy whipping cream, sweeteners. Sweeteners. We'll definitely talk about sweeteners. Pork, I've seen that quite a bit in the space. A lot of people having issues with pork. Lots of dairy, nuts, all the flours, all the alternative flours. Coffee was a question mark for some. Mostly dairy, nuts, all of those alternative flours. Avocados and berries, that's interesting. We'll talk about fruit for sure. Salami, bacon. Okay, really good point there. Processed meats, something else we'll talk about. Alcohol, big one, big. And then medications, which obviously is not a food, but yes, medications can impact things. So those are a lot of the typical offenders that I hear about. So we will be talking about all of those tonight and then some. Okay, so why are these things causing you to stall? Beyond they make you eat more, or it's hard to stop, so you're eating more, so you're over consuming. That's a clear sign. And that's one of the things we got to get real with ourselves about before we get into, this food makes me gain weight. Okay. First and foremost, if you're not already tracking what you're consuming and you don't know for sure how much you're consuming, that is where you have to start. You have to start with awareness, because otherwise we're just grasping at straws and saying, this is making me gain weight, that's making me gain weight. Not necessarily. Something I can say definitively, having been through 7 competition preps now, I have been able to dial it in to the calorie, to the gram of each macro, and play around with lots of different ways of doing it, from eating whatever I wanted within my macros to eating really clean within my macros. And although what I'm about to talk about does play a part, the number one thing that has always will reign true is nailing your macros and not over consuming when we're talking about fat loss. So first and foremost, you got to dial that in. I'm going to talk about that in a minute too. Okay, so let's get into it. The reason why certain foods cause stalls. One word, hard stop. And that word is inflammation. Period. There we go. Masterclass is done, right? Okay, no, I'm going to explain it a lot further, but that is 100%, 160, 180 degrees, 360 degrees. That is the whole story right there. Inflammation is the whole reason why you seem to stall when you eat these foods. But we're going to break it down and talk about exactly what's happening here. So first, you have to understand that inflammation is not body fat. So when you're eating a food that causes inflammation in your body, you will see the scale go up. So when you see the scale go up after eating certain foods, it's not necessarily a stall in fat loss. It is just extra inflammation in your body that is causing water retention. That inflammation in your body is going to show up as weight on the scale. This is yet another reason why I like to track so many more metrics than just the scale. Understanding, having a scale that at the very least measures body fat and lean mass. Skeletal muscle mass, even better. Taking pictures, even better. Taking measurements, even better. lots and lots of things outside the scale, because the scale, once again, it's not lying to you. Let's stop that narrative that the scale is a liar. The scale is not a liar. The scale is telling the truth. The scale doesn't have a brain. It's just reporting back what it receives. So can't get mad at the scale. It is telling the truth. It's just not telling the whole truth. It's lying by omission. It's just not telling you what all the different components are of the weight that it's telling you. So we need to separate the weight from being the most important thing to understanding all these other factors that are playing into what's happening on the scale. The biggest difference on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis is our fluid balance within our body. And this is what happens when we have inflammation in the body. It disrupts the fluid balance, and that's where we're getting these fluctuations. Okay, and lots of other things cause fluctuations, but right now we're talking about inflammation. So getting back to what I was saying a moment ago, let's say you just wanted to eat whatever you wanted and you said, okay, I have macros to follow, so as long as I can fit it in my macros, I'm going to eat it. I've been there. I've done that. I did that this prep. I had times where I was going and getting things that just made me happy to eat them, and they were enjoyable and they were tasty. And I was like, this is not the healthiest food, but it fits in my macros and I want to have it. And guess what? Your girl still made progress. So once again, dialing it in is the most important thing when we're talking about body transformation, okay? So when it comes to weight loss, all that really matters, you're going to hate me for saying this, but sorry to say it, but the calories in, calories out argument is actually accurate. Now, don't run off, because there is more to it than that. I'm not one of those people who's just going to say, eat less and move more, end of story. I know it's not that simple. Most of us came to keto because we understand that it's not that simple. We understand that our hormones may not be functioning the way we need them and want them to function in our body. And that's why this way of eating is so much more beneficial for us, not only for our health, but to actually help us get results where other diets have failed us before. So yes, it is actually true that you could do nothing but lose weight doing nothing but just eating less. You can eat a very small amount of calories or completely eat nothing and just fast, which I'm not recommending. But eventually you would lose body fat. And if you're saying I've done that before, you probably didn't do it long enough or didn't drop your calories low enough. The fact is, if you were to starve yourself, you would actually lose weight. This is why we would die if we don't eat. Eventually, we will lose so much of everything that our body needs, not only body fat, but muscle along with it, which the muscle is the key here. Because when we're losing muscle mass, we're down regulating our metabolism. And then we're going to have to keep eating less and less and less to continue losing. And that's just a function of human metabolism. Your metabolism is going to downregulate when you have exhausted your stores of body fat. So if you get very lean and you're still eating very little, your body is starving. And your metabolism will downregulate to keep you alive. If it didn't, you would die. So this is all, it's not a broken metabolism if you've heard that before. It's not broken, it's actually acting just the way it's supposed to. But this is why we can't just continuously cut calories, because eventually we'll be subsisting on very little. And if we try to eat more, we will gain weight. That's probably where a lot of you are, because you've yo-yo dieted and now you're like, if I look at a cookie, I will gain weight. So calories in, calories out is true, but it's not the full picture and it's not the only factor, and it is not the best for health. So we're talking about two things, body transformation and health. And unfortunately, the two don't always go hand in hand. Typically, if you have a lot of body fat to lose, then weight loss and body transformation is going to correspond with better health. But there are ways that people can get the body of their dreams and totally wreck their health in the process. I see this all the time with competitors. So, hey, Jennifer, I'm glad you made it. Woohoo. Are you on a cruise ship? Living vicariously through you this week. Okay, so when it comes to fat loss, right? Because we're here because we want fat loss, not just weight loss. Because if we lose muscle, we are basically putting ourselves in a much worse position in the long term. So when it comes to fat loss without losing muscle mass, macros are king. Keeping protein high to build or maintain muscle mass, which, like I said, is the key to a healthy metabolism, longevity, and yes, your dream body. And then we have to keep our protein high, we have to limit our fats and carbs to manage our energy balance. This is the calories in, calories out part of it. The calories that can get stored as body fat or used for fuel are calories from carbs and fats. Protein calories do not work the same way. The calories that come in the protein, they're attached to amino acids. Amino acids, proteins in the body, build up the body. They're not stored as fat. So we have to limit our carbs and or our fats, or both, to be able to lose body fat. So once you get your macros right and you're consistently following a proper training program, and you've achieved a solid level of metabolic health, let's say you reverse type 2 diabetes, you've improved your blood work, you're in a good position health-wise, there's a lot you can get away with food selection and still make progress. So if you've seen fitness influencers eating their pizza and their burgers with the buns and the fries and the donuts and the cookies and all that other crap, and they're still making progress, they still have these incredible bodies, that is why. It's not that it's benefiting them or that it's healthy in any way, or that that's a majority of what they're doing, which, first of all, they're not showing you what they're doing most of the time. These are like the glory cheat days that they're sharing. That is not how they're living 80% of the time. That might be a small 5% of the time. So that's one piece. But the other piece to understand is that they're metabolically healthy. They've gotten themselves into a place where their muscle mass, their muscle percentage is high and their body fat is low. So they're in a good place to where their body can handle it. Now that doesn't mean that it's healthy, right? It's still it's an attack on the body to put things into the body that are going to destroy it and not make it healthier. So it's a balancing act. So what I say is, this is what's known in the fitness industry as IIFYM, if it fits your macros. Basically, if it fits your macros, you can shove it in your face. And a lot of very fit people love this because back in the day, it was like the chicken and broccoli diets. And let's be real, who would enjoy dry ass chicken and bland broccoli? Because they also weren't using sodium because they were afraid of salt, which is another myth. But so this IIFYM, when this came on the scene, everybody loved it because now that meant they could fit in foods that they enjoyed. And this made it a more sustainable lifestyle. So you could stick to your diet longer and you can get better results. So there are benefits to being able to eat things that you enjoy along the way and fit it into your macros and still make progress. But just because you can doesn't mean you should. So that's where we get back to the inflammation piece. All right, let me pause and see if there are any comments. Sherry says, I did IIFYM years ago when I was CrossFitting. Way too many calories, never in a deficit. That's the thing though too, is the macros piece of the IIFYM, the M piece, is what's going to determine whether you're in a deficit or in a surplus. So if it was too many calories and you were doing IIFYM, then I would say your macros were wrong. If you were trying to do fat loss. If you were purposely in a surplus, that's a different story. But calories come along with macros. So that's why I always say macros are first before we talk about food selection. And really macros and food selection are like two separate concepts. Oh, it was the company IIFYM. So I imagine you use like an online calculator to get your macros. If that's the case, then those macros, if you were trying to do fat loss, were not right for you. And this is why I always tell people, do not rely on calculators, on macro calculators to tell you what is right for you. And this is why I'm doing this class and all the classes that I've done, because I want you in the driver's seat of your journey. Yeah, she says, yep, they set them. Yeah, so anybody who's watching this and is using something like my carb manager or any nutrition app, MyFitnessPal, Chronometer, and you're just going in there and you're just grabbing whatever they tell you to use for your calories and your macros, do not do that. Do not do that. Watch my macros masterclass. You can search it in the group or tag me and I will tag you where it's posted. Figure out how to do your own macros, how to figure out what's right for your body, because these arbitrary numbers are doing nothing for us. And then we can go down months of the wrong journey and not get any progress, and we're wondering why. So definitely always want you to figure out what's right for you. And that's why we're talking about food selection tonight. So macros aside, let's talk about, and then once again, I just have to go back and like beat that dead horse one more time. 9 times out of 10, if you're not making progress, you need to relook at your macros. It's probably not the food selection first. So the way I do it with clients is I first look at what they're already eating. I do some calculations. I compare that against what they're already eating and the results they're already getting on their current diet before I change anything. I don't just grab numbers off of an online calculator to plug in for them. I make an educated guess about what would be the right macros for them. We test those out for a week or two. And then I watch their progress. If they're not making progress, we need to tweak something right away. If they are, great, we found the right macros for them. So that's where we always start, is where you are. So I always say, when you're starting, first figure out, where am I? Where do I want to go? What do I need to change? And then don't make any drastic changes overnight. Slow, steady, sustainable changes. Okay, I digress. That was enough of a rabbit hole. Now, with that understanding that macros are king, let's talk about the queen. The queen is food selection. So getting back to the concept of inflammation. First and foremost, excessive inflammation can negatively impact your fat loss efforts within your macros. So let's say you have nailed everything. You've got the right macros. You were making progress. You're eating a certain food you weren't eating before. Let's say you decide to make a keto treat with coconut flour, almond flour, some of the things that I mentioned off before that people have mentioned cause them problems. Why is that the case? Okay, so think about it like this. Inflammation. Do y'all know what inflammation is in your body? Actually, I would love to know if anybody can answer that question. What is inflammation in the body? What triggers inflammation in the body? And do you know what it's doing in the body? Because there's a purpose for it. And inflammation is not a bad thing. I know my nurses in the group. I don't know if I have my nurses on here tonight. I know my nurses understand inflammation. Okay, so what inflammation is in the body? It is an immune response. So it is what happened when your body detects danger. Inflammation happens in the body in response to a pathogen. This could be an illness. This could be an injury. Think about when you get a cut. What happens where the cut is? It gets red, it gets swollen, it gets itchy. This is all the immune response. Your body is sending resources to that area to heal it. So inflammation is actually a part of your healing mechanism. It is necessary for healing. So a lot of the time, I don't like to take things like Tylenol or ibuprofen because I'm not trying, especially ibuprofen and NSAIDs, because I don't want to eliminate the immune response of inflammation, which is trying to heal my body. So I typically try not to take those things unless I'm in complete agony, because I want that inflammation to happen so that it can heal. It has to inflame before it can anti-inflame. So much like we see like these antibacterial soaps and all that today, we're all about antibacterial, antifungal, anti-inflammation. but we need inflammation. So we don't always want to blunt that inflammation signal. We want our bodies to do what they're supposed to do. So essentially, your immune system is going into high gear to fight off whatever pathogen it detects. This can be bacteria, virus, all kinds of things. So a lot of the time, the thing that's causing inflammation from the foods is that food particles, amino acids, proteins, typically it's from the proteins in foods, will end up in the bloodstream where they're not supposed to be and cause havoc on the systems of the body. This usually happens because of something called leaky gut. It is where the tight junctions of your gut lining are supposed to be tight to allow nutrients into the bloodstream, but not undigested food particles, basically. When they get leaky, they separate, and now they're letting too many things through. So this is what, if you've ever heard the term leaky gut, that's what it's talking about. The more scientific term is intestinal permeability. Typically, when we hear the gut, we're not necessarily talking about the stomach. We're talking about the intestines, that part of our body where our microbiome lives, all the little bugs living in our guts. Okay, so let me ask you another question. Do you think the body can function optimally when it's inflamed? Nope. Thank you, Amy. Nope. Sherry, nope. Cool. Yeah. Your body can only do so many things at one time. Yes, our bodies are always doing lots of things at the same time, but just like they say with multitasking for us, it can't do anything well, fully, 100% when it's trying to do so many things at the same time. Same reason why you don't want to have a huge meal and then go train immediately after. Your body's trying to digest all that food you just ate, and you're going to go try to direct the blood flow and the attention of your body and the energy of your body into your muscle cells. That's not an optimal situation for either digestion or for muscle building or muscle breaking down, really, which is what you're doing in the gym. So think of inflammation like recovering from a cold. This is not when you can push super hard in the gym. This is not when you're going to wake up with bounding energy. This is not when you're going to be the most productive cognitively. When you're in the acute stage of healing, which is the inflammatory response, every other function of your body is going to be operating suboptimally. So what do you think this means for fat loss and muscle building? Do you think your body is going to be able to prioritize those functions when it has an invader? It's dealing with an invader. It's dealing with an attack. Absolutely not. It's going to direct every resource it has to the pathogen, to the inflammatory substance, to getting to inflaming and then anti-inflaming so that it can heal whatever's happening internally. So when you hear very blanket terms, especially I see this in carnivore groups, oh, you have to let your body heal. You know, for 6 months, for a year, you're going to be healing before you can lose any weight. You can absolutely lose weight while you heal, but you have to pay attention to what you're putting in your body. Are you going to continue to put in things that are going to exacerbate the problem and create chronic inflammation in your body? Or are you going to put things in your body that are going to allow that inflammation to die down so that you can get back to that healthy state? So when you see people talking about that healing, like has to happen first, if you've been assaulting your body for 30 years or more, which a lot of us have before coming to this lifestyle, yeah, it can take a little while for your body to fully heal. That doesn't mean it's hopeless, and it doesn't mean you can't make any progress until all of the healing has happened. You can certainly do both of them. But the question is, are you going to throw more oil on the fire and stoke that fire, stoke that inflammation? Or are you going to treat your body right by putting things in your body that are going to calm down the inflammation and help it get to a healing place? Okay, so let's see. So eating things that drive up the inflammation in your body are counterproductive to your body transformation goals. This is especially true for anyone who has a chronic health issue, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, prediabetes, autoimmune conditions, oh my goodness, gut dysbiosis, and all that means is IBS, leaky gut, SIBO, candida, parasites, on and on and on, anything that might be going on with your gut. Okay, let's talk about the gut inflammation piece of it in particular. So there is another side of this as to why your body, why it's hard to make progress when you're inflamed. Yes, okay, number one we've touched on is that all of your body systems are just not going to be functioning optimally, including your metabolism, including your fat burning mechanisms, being able to release stored body fat, and properly break down and repair your muscles to build muscle. But on the other side of this, we also have nutrient malabsorption happening. So if you are dealing with gas, bloat, constipation, you're dealing with gut dysfunction, right? You can feel it, it's palpable. These are not just unpleasant. These symptoms signify a greater health issue or health risk happening within your body. If you've ever heard of the term or the statement, your immune system resides in the gut, the majority of your immune system does reside in your gut. So when your gut is disrupted or dysbiotic, it is going to impact every other system of the body. So do not take these things lightly. And most women have just relegated themselves to this just being their life, being bloated after meals, just expecting that this is a part of life. It is not, and it is not what you have to deal with. And if you're dealing with it, there is a greater issue at hand. So I highly recommend working with a functional doctor. This is probably not going to go through your insurance. If you can find someone through your insurance, amazing. But for the last 6 or 7 years now, I have gone outside insurance and used functional doctors, got all my own testing, went to third-party testing sites, because I want to know what's happening with my health, and allopathic doctors, unfortunately, did not serve me in that regard. So working with a functional doctor or a functional medicine practitioner who understands how to read this kind of blood work, what tests are beneficial for you. What I will recommend is don't start with food allergy tests or food sensitivity tests. You could get, and I'm going to go into that in a minute about all the foods we're about to talk about, but you can find out you're allergic, or not even allergic, but sensitive to most foods. That's not telling you anything other than the fact that you have leaky gut. And the fact is the majority of the population does. So don't start there. I would personally recommend getting a full comprehensive stool panel that's going to tell you exactly what's happening in your gut microbiome. If you have anything overgrown, so bad bacteria, or you're underpopulated on certain bacteria. And I also recommend doing this before you start taking probiotics, and not just to be out there taking any old probiotic. I touched on this a little bit in the Q&A when we got into supplements. But I always recommend finding out what's actually happening in your body, vitamins, minerals, deficiencies, probiotics that you actually need, and not just taking things that you heard about. Oh, there you go. Sherry said she has been going through this process with a functional medicine practitioner, did a food sensitivity test and a stool test to kick things off, and there was a lot going on. Still healing, but he used the same example of adding fuel to the fire. Yep, exactly. I'm so glad you went that route. Absolutely. And we can do a masterclass specifically about gut health. It's probably about time I did that. That's really what got my whole journey started. So it's my mini passion project. Okay, so the gist here is that when digestion is impaired, it impacts your body's ability to absorb nutrients from the food you eat. So this can lead to nutritional deficiencies, which then further impact your health in all of your bodily systems. Neurological, endocrine are a couple of major ones. So it can impact your hormones. And here's an example that directly leads into body composition changes. It can impact the hormones that control your hunger and your satiety. So that's going to be key in trying to stick to your macros and follow the plan and get the results that you're looking for. But that's just one example. In general, if you are not cleaving the nutrients, receiving the nutrients from your food, then it's almost like, okay, why are you even eating healthy, right? Like you're not going to get the things that they're talking about when they talk about, oh, these particular foods are so nutrient dense. That's great. But if you cannot break that down and absorb that and use that properly in your body, what's the point? So we are not just what we eat, but we are what we absorb. All right. So that being said, let's talk about the foods that are the greatest culprits. Spoiler alert, when I get to the end of this list, you may feel there's nothing left for you to eat. But don't worry, I'm going to give you some action plans. I have 5 steps or 5 tips for you on how you can figure out which of these foods may be offenders for you and which ones may be the ones that you want to test moving forward. Okay, because it's an exhaustive list. All right, so let's get into it. First, we have the obvious offenders. Any heavily processed packaged junk food. We all know, we are not deluding ourselves, that these junk foods are not good for us and can cause all kinds of havoc within the body. This is everything from our candy bars to cakes, cupcakes, pies, cookies, candy, etc., etc. I would put protein bars in this category. So if you were thinking of protein bars or granola bars or faux granola bars, keto granola, whatever you want to call it, as a health food, I would put that in this category. Anything highly processed, packaged junk. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what that entails to read labels and things of that nature. But if it comes out of a package, number 1 offender. Within that, which is likely in all of those packaged goods, but also on their own, are vegetable and seed oils. These are highly oxidative oils that are going to cause major inflammation in your body. If there was one thing I could tell you could remove from your diet and see absolutely phenomenal results health-wise and otherwise moving forward, the first thing I would tell anybody to remove from their home, their kitchen, their shopping cart is these oils. This includes canola, corn, rapeseed, sunflower, safflower. That includes the sunflower and safflower oils that are purported to be healthy. Nope. We want oils that did not have to be chemically extracted. Those vegetables do not create their own oil. Okay, so when we're talking about healthy oils like olive oils, olives actually, you can squeeze them and get oil out of them. So think about it like that. You can squeeze that ear of corn all you want. It's not going to create oil. So the processes they have to go through to create those oils are what make them highly oxidative. Okay, so that's number 1, the oils. And a lot of the time you're going to find that in all those packaged products as well. Next up, I would say sugar and all sugar substitutes, especially the artificial ones, especially sucralose, maltodextrin, dextrose, sugar alcohols. Oh my goodness, I have a list of all of them. I didn't put them all on this list, but malitol, xylitol, erythritol, allulose. Yep. All of those things, just because they don't have to list it on the label as a carb, does not mean that it's healthy for you, or that it's okay, or that it's not going to cause problems. So sugar and all sugar substitutes, the only ones I typically consume if I'm going to have any at all are pure stevia extract in the bottle, the drops, where you just need like 5 drops and that's all. Monk fruit extract. Stevia and monk fruit are natural sweeteners. Now, some people still have problems with stevia or monk fruit. So stevia, or sweeteners of any kind can be inflammatory in the body. And that's going to be individual. So just think of, if it's sweet, they added something to it and it can cause havoc. All right, the other big offenders that we all know of gluten and gluten-containing grains, and any grains, really, grains in general. And I will add to this list fibers and high fiber foods like chia, flax, hemp, psyllium, inulin. A lot of those fibers, which I think I wrote down later down here. Maybe I didn't. I put that on a different list. I have a cheat sheet I'm going to create for y'all with all of this stuff on it. And it's in my welcome packet for my one-on-one clients, breaking down like the best food options and foods to moderate and foods to avoid. But all of those fibers that they're adding to those packaged products, particularly if it's a keto product, if it has the word keto on it, they have added some kind of crappy fiber to it. Go look at a Quest bar. Look at the ingredients on a Quest bar. You've got all kinds of corn, what was it? Not corn starch. It's like, they come up with all kinds of new names for these fibers all the time and try to fool you. And to make it past the FDA, to be allowed to be listed as a fiber on the package, which they have been changing those regulations over the last few years. Alice says, I get the stevia drops from Trader Joe's. Are those okay? Here's the thing, and this is what I mean with, and we're going to get into this in a minute, but what's okay for you is not my decision, right? I am going to tell you, like, all sweeteners can cause problems. Even stevia, even pure stevia can cause problems for people. So is that okay for you? I don't know. I would say stevia and monk fruit extracts, the drops, are going to be probably your best bet when it comes to sweeteners of any kind. The ones I avoid no matter what are the granulated ones. So when you're seeing like the stevia in granulated packets, they're usually adding dextrose, dextrin, or erythritol. So read the ingredients. That's the number one thing, is read the ingredients on things. The drops I seem to do okay with. But some people report gut problems, even from pure stevia. Oh, snap, you can reach out to Celeste. She grows stevia in her garden. That is cool. I got some leaves from a farmer's market years ago. I dried them up and kept them crushed. I don't know what I did with them with the moves, but even then, once again, you're gonna have to, I'm gonna talk about this in a minute, how to determine whether or not these things are actually okay for you. Okay, so we all know about gluten and even non-gluten containing grains of any kind. And this is where you're going to find like all of those alternative flours, baking products, and things of that nature. Think about it. You're trying to recreate a junk food. So even though the ingredients might be a little better, according to whomever, maybe they're not gluten containing, maybe they're lower in carb, that doesn't necessarily mean they're healthy. So, but the big ones, I see a lot of people leaning on fibers because they've been taught, just like we've been taught about everything else wrong, that we need to consume so much fiber in a day and fiber is good for our gut. Actually, I have a video I'm going to share with you all. I don't remember who it was from, but I'm going to share it with you about fiber. I think it'll really help open your eyes about fiber. But those things like chia, flax, hemp, psyllium, inulin, and all of these fructooligosaccharides, the things that they're putting in products to be able to call them fibers they can totally screw up your gut. So be careful of those. All right, moving on to our beloved dairy. Okay, this is a major offender honestly, for most people. Even the people who say, oh, dairy doesn't bother me, I guarantee you never took it out. And if you did, maybe you took it out for a few days or a week, maybe even 2 weeks. But if you have never taken dairy completely out, and butter is dairy, y'all. Butter is dairy. If you have never taken dairy out completely for at least 60 days, probably more like 90 days or longer, you do not really know how it is impacting your body. We'll talk about elimination diets and the timelines on those, but This is where I have to challenge you to think past the emotional connection and attachment to these foods, because you may think it's not bothering you, but if you've never done an experiment, you really don't know. And if you're getting progress with your macros, you're doing great, you're enjoying these foods, and they don't seem to be causing you any distress in your body, more power to you. IIFYM it all day till the cows come home. Have fun. But if you're stalled, this is where you have to start asking yourself these questions. A, are my macros right? Am I following them right? Am I tracking food correctly? Do I have that part down? If the answer is yes, and you're eating things that you think, even you've heard could be an issue, and you're blind to that fact because you enjoy them so much, challenge yourself to really look a little closer. Maria says, you're killing me. Yes, so Sherry says dairy triggers sinus issues for her. Same here. That has been one of the biggest issues. And one of the things I hear a lot about dairy is its production of mucus. So definitely that is one of the biggest ways I see it play out for people. Either it tends to be the sinus irritation, congestion, or hormonal acne. Dairy can definitely impact the hormones. And the other big thing is usually gut troubles. So I see a lot of that, either gut, skin, or the sinuses, the mucous membranes. Some people, I think, even have headaches and things of that nature, but usually it's those big three that I see with dairy. The other big one, nuts and seeds, nut butters, seed butters, nut flours, seed flours. Those things, that was one of my eye-opening moments back when I used to do Whole30s before I went keto. I would do a Whole30 and it took care of most things, but I noticed I would start leaning more toward the nuts because I was taking out all the sweet stuff and all the desserts and all the treats. So then I'd eat more nuts, and then I noticed that discomfort, bloat, that kind of a thing. So they can be harsh on the digestive tract and difficult to digest for many reasons. I'm not drilling down into all of the phytates and anti-nutrients and all of that kind of thing. But one thing you can do with nuts and seeds is you can soak them and sprout them. So if you've seen sprouted nuts, sprouted pumpkin seeds, things of that nature in your local healthy grocer, that is a step in the right direction with them. And I typically also recommend do not consume the roasted nuts. Whenever it's roasted, look at the ingredients. Usually they're going to roast them in peanut oil, corn oil, soybean oil, or even canola oil. So check the oils and limit your nuts and nut products. Okay, next up we have fruits and veggies, which are supposed to be so healthy for us, right? Okay, so there's quite a few sub-classifications of fruit and veg that can cause major problems for certain people. Typically, this is going to relate to your health status. Usually it's gut related. It's some kind of dysbiosis that these will trigger or inflame or cause to make worse. Or it could be something unrelated, like joint issues and things of that nature. So we had FODMAPs. If you've ever heard of the low FODMAP diet, this is something that takes out certain FODMAPs. And there are FODMAP lists you can go out there and find. There's an app about it, about what veggies and fruits have FODMAPs in them. These are fructooligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. I think that's all of them. But that's what FODMAP stands for. These are all the types of sugars, basically, fibers, sugars that are going to cause problems. Nightshades is another thing a lot of you probably notice, whether or not you have issues with things like potatoes, peppers, tomatoes, that family of vegetables. Nightshades people can have issues with, especially with autoimmune conditions. Goitrogens or goitrogenic foods. These are foods like your brassicas, your broccoli, your cauliflower. Can't remember if kale is in that class. It might be spinach. But These things can cause thyroid issues. So goitrogenic foods, oxalates. I almost grabbed the book. I have Sally Norton's new book. What's it called? Toxic Superfoods. All about oxalate overload and how that can cause problems. So spinach is probably the number one worst offender, but there are many other foods that fruits and veggies included that have a lot of oxalate. I never say this right. Oxalates, salicylates, and phytates. So all of it, let's just sum all that up to say certain veggies and fruits and many, many veggies and fruits can cause problems for certain populations of people. This is why so many people who go to the carnivore diet go carnivore, because they've done the discovery to figure out that a lot of these things are causing problems for them. So they go to an ultimate elimination diet, which is just consuming meats. Because if you got this far, then you realize that the only thing I've mentioned so far that I haven't mentioned so far is meat. Everything else can cause major problems. So let's get into that. Let's say you're on a carnivore diet and you went and did BBB&E, beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, and you're still having problems. Well, heavily processed meats, now this is going to include more than bacon, but hot dogs, sausages, bacon, salami, pepperoni, packaged meat products, even jerkies, especially jerkies, because a lot of those, they're adding all kinds of crap to those. But highly processed meats can also be highly inflammatory. And for many people, pork causes problems. So this lion diet that I'm still in, but I'm now starting to slowly add some things back. That's essentially what that was about. It is a full, complete elimination diet. You're taking everything out except for beef, ruminant meats. So basically beef and lamb for me. Goat would be included in there too. And things that came from them, like lard, the fat from the tallow from the animals. That's it. And salt and water. Because spices can cause problems for people. Certain spices and herbs can cause problems. And I'm not done yet. You have a lot of people on a carnivore diet that still have problems. They could have something called histamine intolerance. This means that the body has a difficult time breaking down the histamine. So high histamine foods, or foods that trigger histamine release, or even foods that block what's called DAO, diamine oxidase production, because DAO is what breaks down histamine in the body. So any of those three food groups can cause issues with histamine intolerance. What foods am I talking about here? Alcohol, fermented beverages, fermented foods, dairy products, dried fruits, avocado, eggplant, spinach, processed or smoked meats, shellfish, and aged cheeses and meats. So that's most of I already covered in other groups that I talked about, but now we have shellfish added into the game. So let's say you were a carnivore, but you were eating a lot of shellfish. Okay, there's another thing that could cause an issue. And then foods that trigger histamine release, once again, alcohol, but also bananas, tomatoes, wheat germ, beans, papaya, chocolate, citrus fruits, nuts, food dyes, and other food additives. And then when we get into the foods that block DAO production, now we're adding in things like, once again, alcohol, but also black mate or green tea and energy drinks. So now I've taken away your tea, your chocolate, your shellfish. What's left, right? Okay, so now we're getting into the final category, and this is individual food sensitivities or allergies. These are the typical things we hear, like nuts, shellfish, and eggs. Oh no, there goes the eggs. Typically, it's the egg whites that are going to cause the biggest problem because they are amino acids. And like I said, if you're getting an immune response or inflammatory response from your foods, it's from the amino acids from those foods hitting your bloodstream. So typically the fats are going to be less likely to cause problems. Even people who have allergies to certain nuts sometimes can handle the oils but not the actual nuts themselves, because they have the proteins, the oils are just the fats. So, okay, you're like, what the hell can I eat now, right? A good example, I may have mentioned her in a past class, but Michaela Peterson, who created the Lion Diet, did so because she had juvenile rheumatoid arthritis from the age of, I want to say it was like preteen, I think. And she was in agony for most of her life. Not only that, but neurological issues and mental health disorders. And that's why she created this diet, because basically all she eats is fresh ruminant animals and salt and water, and that's it. And yeah, Sarah says beef tends to be more aged than other ruminants. Yeah, so even Michaela has found like certain companies where she knows their practices and they're fresh frozen, and then she can get them, cook them right there. So the other big thing with histamine issues is leftovers or bone broth. Any really long cooked broths can be an issue too. So there you go. It's like, okay, what's left? There's like literally nothing left, right? Now you're going to be a breatharian? No, of course not. Okay, so this is let's get into the how we can resolve these things, and not necessarily resolve the underlying issues, because that may take more than just changing your foods. But so that we don't have to live on air alone, let's talk about how you can apply this to your context to find out what's right for you. Okay. So number one, that's number two. Okay. First tip, 5 tips to figure out what food selection to choose for you. Number one, if you're embarking on this journey, and really this should apply to everything when it comes to your food choices, work to remove the emotion. Take the emotional attachment out of your food selection. If you're truly committed to getting the results you want in both your health and your body, you have to let go of your attachment to foods just because you like the way they taste. This is the key to being able to objectively discern whether the foods you've been choosing are holding you back or not. I loved my coffee. Okay, I loved it. I did not want to give it up. But simply because of that was the reason I knew I had to give it up for a time. The attachment could be holding you back. So first and foremost, you have to start looking at this objectively and become a detective. Become your own detective and figure out what's happening with your body. So that's number one. Number two, choose to do an elimination diet, but not an arbitrary protocol. Not just, oh, I have this issue, so I'm going to do this elimination diet because this is what somebody wrote a book about. Because y'all, that's where all of them came from. A person who had that experience, who wrote a book or wrote a protocol, or a doctor who wrote a protocol, probably because they had an experience that made them write that protocol. AIP, paleo AIP, autoimmune protocol, low FODMAP diet, Whole30, GAPS, which stands for gut and psychology syndrome, even carnivore, any other diet you read about in a book or somebody is talking about for a condition, that's not written for you. So you could be doing exactly what it says and still having issues. So do not just pull an arbitrary protocol that you read somewhere, take that yes or no foods list and just run with it. This is about creating your own trial experiment to remove the potential offenders that could be causing problems for you. Okay, if you are going to jump to any elimination diet protocol that's been written by someone else, the number one, my top choice, what I would recommend for anyone, is to read the book Gut and Psychology Syndrome by Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. And when I post this, I'll share the link to the GAPS diet, but you could just Google it, search for GAPS diet. What I like about that protocol, if you're willing to go that far, is if you do the intro program and then lead into the full GAPS program, it starts you as if you can't eat anything. It starts you with stock, not even beef, broth, not even broth, because broth, once again, slow cooked, could cause issues with histamine. So it starts out with just stock, meat stock. And then they start slowly adding things back in. So you're essentially completely removing everything and just bringing everything back in one at a time, very systematically. I did that protocol back in 2014, and it was miraculous for me, like night and day. So my other caveat there would be, don't dive into the deep end with all the things once you're healed, because I did that and then had to go through this many more years. So if you're going to do an elimination protocol, know that you need to commit to the reintroduction protocol, not just the elimination part. And I see a lot of people following carnivore and just think, well, I feel great on this, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And you know what? If that works for you and you're happy doing that, fantastic. I have definitely, at the end of this lion diet protocol, and I was happy on carnivore, ketovore. That was cool. I could do that forever, but lion is a little much for me, and I'm not in a place where I have major issues to fix. So I want more variety, but the goal should be healing the underlying cause. While you're doing this, you remove the offender so that you can heal, and then you can start bringing things back in. And you should, if you're healed, be able to handle more things and more variety. But once again, it doesn't mean we're diving into the cupcakes, because that will just exacerbate, recreate all the problems all over again. So here's what I would recommend doing. Make a list of all the foods that you suspect to be the biggest issue for you, and then rate them highest to lowest priority. And if you have no idea, then just write down what you're eating every day and pay attention to your symptoms. And I'm going to give you actually a free download at the end of this for anybody who wants it, to help you do that. Okay, so there are two ways that you can remove them. One would be, like I said, with the GAPS diet protocol, for example, eliminate all of them for a period of time and then start bringing them back in one by one. That can be a lot for people. And here's something you have to be careful of with elimination diets, is that you can get severe toxic reactions, die-off reactions, as they call them, or Herxheimer reaction, or even withdrawal symptoms. You know, think when you remove coffee or caffeine and you get those hideous headaches. But it can come out in all different forms. Sally Norton talks about that in her book, Toxic Superfoods, about the oxalates, for example. When people are trying to deal with oxalate overload, they should not just go cold turkey and cut them all out all at once, because they can have some serious toxic reactions. So some people have to go slower and other people can go faster. So just keep that in mind. And if you deal with major reactions, then maybe you went too hard too soon and you need to slowly take the slower approach. So if you're going to take the slower approach, this is what I would recommend. Because I like minimal effective dose on most things. Focus on the low-hanging fruit. So you made your list of your top offenders. You start to make some connections about what could be causing the problems for you, and you take those out first. Wean off the biggest things first. Make notes if you notice any changes. If you're doing okay without them, keep them out while you start taking other things out. Or you can do literally one thing at a time, but that is going to take the longest. So totally up to you. Okay, tip number 3. If you're not experiencing symptoms related to health conditions in particular, like flare-ups, then what I want you to focus on for your elimination is your body's biofeedback. The same kinds of things I ask my clients about every week. So beyond the scale numbers, your energy, your mood, hunger, satiety, libido, digestion, bowel habits, strength and stamina in your workouts, sleep quality and quantity, stress, but not just stress level, but like stress management ability. How are you managing the stress in your life? Are you more irritable than usual? And so you have mood issues. So at least start tracking those things beyond the scale to see if these things are impacting you in ways that are beyond the scale. Then, if you do have a health or medical condition you're seeking to improve, add to this list with your specific symptoms. What happens when you get a flare up? What does that look like? Write those symptoms down. And then for all of those biofeedback and symptoms that I listed, have a list. And every week, give yourself a scale of 1 to 10 rating on how you're doing on that. And make any notes of what might have happened that week or that day. If you're doing an elimination, let's say one food at a time, take it out. This is going to be tip number 4. Be patient and give it time. For an elimination diet to be effective, it needs to be more than a few days and most likely more than a few weeks. So if you're talking one food in particular, give it a minimum of 3 to 4 weeks. If you're going to do a larger elimination protocol, I would say at least 60 to 90 days and then start bringing things back in slowly. And when you bring them back in one at a time. Do not confound the results by bringing everything back in at once. Now you don't know what was really impacting you. And then tip number 5, really, really key here. Do not change anything else during the time of your elimination. If you're introducing new variables, new foods, different foods, you're going out to eat, so you go to this place and you have this thing you've never had, and you don't know what's in it because you didn't ask them at the restaurant, or you just started a new workout program and now you're working out 6 days a week and before you were sedentary, or you're going through a major life change, you're having a baby, you're getting married, you're moving across the country, or you're traveling and you don't know where you're going to be eating and you can't control the variables, or you have a major life change with your sleep schedule and your routine. Let's say you were an entrepreneur and now you're going back to work and now you got to get up at the crack of dawn. If these major changes are happening in your body, in your life at the same time, it's going to be very difficult to pinpoint just what might be happening from your foods. You can't always blame your foods for everything. Let's say you just started a new skincare regimen and now you've taken dairy out and now your skin's breaking out. And you're like, well, I took the dairy out and now my skin's breaking out. Well, it could be the new skincare you just started. So don't start new skincare, new hair products, new body products at the same time you're doing this. You have to consider everything together. Okay, so that was the 5 tips. Tip number 1, take the emotion out of it. Be objective, become a detective. Tip number 2, choose an elimination diet. I would recommend either going the GAPS route or creating your own trial experiment. List your own foods and start there. Number 3, track your symptoms during your elimination phase. And then when you bring the foods back in. Number 4, give it time, be patient. Number 5, don't change anything else. Control the variables. Okay. Anybody have any questions so far about this topic of food selection? As you have any questions, because we're going to wrap up in just a minute, I am working on 2 things for you, for those who want it. Number 1, the Nutritional Therapy Association, nutritional therapy practitioners use a food and mood journal with their clients. I am going to share my food and mood journal template with you so you can use that, and it will also have instructions for how to carry out a proper elimination diet so you can try that on your own. So that's number 1. The second resource I'm creating for you is my cheat sheet, taking it from my welcome guide that I use with my clients, cheat sheet of foods to watch out for and why. And then this has inspired me. I'm like fired up about this topic so much. I've been planning to do this for a very long time, but I'm building out resource sections of my website that will discuss every single one of these healing diets you may have heard of, some of the ones I rattled off earlier, why they're effective, who they might be effective for, who might want to consider them, and what else to consider if you're going AIP, if you're trying Whole30, if you're doing GAPS, all these kinds of things. So yeah, my fire has been stoked. We'll be talking a lot more about gut health and other things related to this. And I cannot wait to share all these resources with you as I build them out. If anybody has specific questions about any of this stuff, let me know. We can dive deeper on a future masterclass. that is all I have for you today. Anything striking anyone from tonight's masterclass? Anything you're thinking about testing out personally? Any particular foods? Alice says she's going to try to take out dairy. Woo! Well, I'll tell you what, girl, that was the first thing I ever eliminated way back in 2011, I think it was. And that started the whole shebang. And I did it for Lent because at the time I could not stick to a diet to save my life. So the only thing that would get me to give up anything was God. So Lent is coming up. I want to say it starts next week for anybody who celebrates it. I don't know which day. I don't have it on my calendar, but that's how I had to do it. I did it as a religious sacrifice, but it's the best thing. It was the best. It was the gift that kept on giving because it gave me so much. It gave me my life back. It gave me my health back, and then eventually led to my dream body. So health first, aesthetics second. Just to wrap up and summarize, nail your macros first. Enjoy the foods you love. I would rather you be able to sustain this lifestyle than to quit because you're miserable without your favorite foods. But if your favorite foods are causing you problems, it's time to wake up, open your eyes, become aware, take ownership, get in the driver's seat, take the emotion out of it, and basically pull up your big girl panties and do what you got to do. All right, ladies, that is all I have for you tonight. I will see you in the group. Drop your questions, follow up, anything you want for follow up, and any other topics you want to hear about on a future masterclass. And I'll see y'all next week. And for my challenge, ladies, I'll see y'all Wednesday night. Good night. Go crush it this week.